Thank you for joining us for another online live detailing class. We got kind of a fun topic today. You know, back in 2003, I worked for McGuire's and they transitioned my job from the corporate writer to what they called the internet technical specialist, which I always thought it sounded like a guy that changes out servers or something. But my primary job was to teach detailing classes there and then also run their discussion forum where I answer detailing questions. So that's back to 2003. So I've been paid to answer detailing questions for over 2 decades now. And one of the really common questions I would get all the time, it goes like this. Hey Mike, can I remove sanding marks using a DA polisher? And of course the simple answer is yes. Any polisher that has the ability to remove swirls, scratches, water spots, or oxidation can pull out sanding scratches. The primary difference is the efficiency and the speed in which it Hey, thank you for joining us today for our live broadcast. Just to let you know, we've had a little bit of spotty internet connection, so if for some reason our feed drops, remember you can always go to the Dr. Beasley's YouTube channel where this video will be recorded and archived to see the entire thing. So today's topic is a question I've been asked all my life, well, all my detailing life. Can a DA polisher or a random orbital polisher be used to remove sanding marks? For example, this 1992 Chevy just got a custom paint job. It's got a lot of orange peel. We're going to sand it down and buff it out. So the question is, could we use a DA polisher like a Porter Cable or a Griot's or a Rupes? And the short answer is yes. Any polisher that has the ability to remove swirls, scratches, water spots, and oxidation could also pull out sanding marks. The contributing factors as to whether or not it would be an efficient process would be some things that maybe are out of control, like how hard or how soft the paint is, how deep or how shallow the sanding marks out. If you finish out at 1500 grit, it's going to be a lot harder to pull those sanding marks out than if you finish out with Trizac 5000 grit. So, and then there's of course the efficiency and the time. You know, if it takes longer, then it's going to take longer to do the entire project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little demonstration here. This is fresh paint. This is a single stage. This is all grip. Technically, it's a paint that was made for the aircraft industry, but it's also used in the marine world. My son-in-law built this truck, painted it himself. He chose this acrylic enamel all grip, single stage jet black paint, because he's smart enough to know in Florida, exposed to the sun and also extreme, weather, the rain, clear coats will tend to fail over time. If you got a single stage paint, you don't have to worry about clear coat failure. The worst thing that'll happen is you'll get oxidation, and of course you can always buff that out. So I thought that was pretty wise on his part to choose something that he can maintain for as long as he owns this car. But we're going to start out, and I sanded this thing down. So I hand sanded this with 1000 grit to knock down the pill using a hard block. Then I hit 1000, then 1200. Then I switched over to 1500 with the medium density block, and then I resanded with 1500 all by hand. Then I machine sanded dry using 1500 Eagle abrasives, and there's actually a Flex cordless DA sander. And then I finished out with Trizac 3000. So this has been through an extensive multiple step sanding process, and the end results are 3000 grit from damp sanding. But first thing I want to do is I just want to show you that, to kind of answer the question, can you pull sanding marks out using a DA? I can pull them out by hand. Okay, it's not going to be fast, might not be as pretty, but it's one of the things I teach in our classes, because sometimes you'll get sanding marks in a place where it's really hard to get in there with a spinning pad of any type. So I'm just going to, this is some NSP 95, this is a microfiber applicator pad. And the way you would pull sanding marks out by hand is you got to do something I call put a little passion, that's elbow grease, a little passion behind the pad. So you don't just apply it like this. You got to get down there and rub hard. Okay, there's about, 20 seconds of hard rubbing. Let's go ahead and wipe off, and there you go. So back to the question, can you use a DA polisher to remove sanding marks? Heck, if I can use my hand, that answers the question. Yes, you could use a DA. The question is always the efficiency and the speed. So let me go ahead and show you the traditional approach. So the traditional approach used by body shops and detail shops is to use a wool pad on a rotary polisher. And I'm just going to buff a section out here. Then I'm going to flip over to that side. I've got a Rupes Bigfoot 15 set up with one of their wool cutting pads. And when I'm done, I'll have Yancey come down here and just show you that, yes, in fact, the sanding marks have been removed. Okay, here we go. Now this paint was painted this last Saturday, so this is the definition of fresh paint. The rest of the truck was painted a couple weeks ago. They repainted the hood though because they had some paint defects they just were not happy with. Okay, let me give that a quick inspection. And here you can see the black single stage paint coming off. Again, this is a paint called All Grip. And it's used, I was told it was developed for the aircraft industry, but it's also used in the marine industry. Okay, from what I can tell, in this section here, 100% of the sanding marks have been removed. I'm going to go ahead and polish a little bit just so it'll look a little bit better on camera.
Do you want me to come in?
Huh?
Do you want me to come in?
Wait till I'm done polishing. Wait till I do both. Okay. Okay, here we go. That was just 8 textbook style section passes. And we're going to put this through a 3-step polishing process when we do the entire truck. So we're going to cut it, then we're going to polish it twice because it is black paint. We do want that flawless show car finish. Okay, so that's one side. That's using a traditional rotary wool pad. And let me go ahead and just clarify that for the camera. But wait to come in here after I do the other section. Okay. Yeah, I need to get that just a little bit more perfect for you for a camera on there. So I found this paint being single stage, it just tends to react a little bit better using a free spinning tool. And because I'm going to be using the roux heads over there, I'm just going to bust out my little pour cable here. And this is a free spinning tool, obviously. And we'll see if it just leaves a little bit nicer finish. So one of the things that I also just wanted to point out is pad technology, abrasive technology, and tool technology has really come a long ways. And that's one of the things that will enable a DA polisher to pull out sanding marks and of course also finish out show car ready. Okay, mucho better, mucho better. Wow, so at some point, Yancey, you can capture the orange pill over here and then show the difference that a multiple step sanding process by hand and by machine will get you when you're trying to remove orange peel. I have a couple oranges here just in case people don't know what orange peel is. When we talk about orange peel and paint, it means after the car was painted, the paint set up and dried in a way that has a texture that looks kind of like an orange peel. So that's where the term comes from if you're not familiar with that. Okay, so that side was rotary polisher followed by orbital polisher. And I did this exact same process to both sides of this, exactly. So this is the Rupes Bigfoot 15, and this is their aggressive wool cutting pad for DAs. And it looks like I got it, make sure it's completely centered here. It's really important anytime you're using a random orbital to absolutely get that pad centered. Okay, and then when using a microfiber pad like this, it's important to prime that pad so 100% of the face of that pad is coated with abrasives. And then after you've done that, then you can go ahead and add like 3 pea-sized drops just so you have some what I call working product. Years ago, there was a guy, his name's Kevin Brown. He got all this fame and glory for coming up with what they call the KBM, the Kevin Brown method. And it was basically doing this, taking your finger or some sort of implement and coating the fibers. And it's a good practice, it's a good technique. And the idea being, when you turn this on, 100% of those fibers are cutting for you. You're being as efficient as you can. Okay, so then, there's my 3 pea-sized drops. And again, I'm just gonna work a little section out here. Okay, I'm gonna turn this at a low setting to spread this out. Okay, that is the 5-speed setting. And if you look, I'm maintaining really good pad rotation. And that's key when using a free spinning random orbital polisher. You want to maintain good pad rotation and good pad oscillation. Okay, let's see how that looks. And again, you can see some of that single stage black paint coming off on that pad. That was a brand new pad. Wow, that looks good. That actually looks really good. I'm going to go ahead and do a little polishing work to it too. This is kind of the cool thing. If you're pulling sanding marks out with a DA polisher or what's called a random orbital polisher, you can both cut and polish with the same tool. And these are the Rupes Contour Profile pads, really nice pads. Rupes did a great job when they developed these pads. The thing I like about them is that contour profile, and what it does is it allows the pad to mushroom or squish back versus twist in if there didn't have that contour profile there. Okay, let me turn my speed down, spread this product out. And come up to, there's the 4. And one of the things I like about the Rupes tools is they're so well balanced. This is 3. 4. 5. Maintain the shadow. There we go. 6. 7. We'll lighten up on the pressure to finish out. There's 8 textbook section passes. Okay. That looks good. 1 second here before we bring the camera over. I want to wipe the splatter off of this side. Not supposed to splatter, but I did. Clarify this side. This is a new product that Jim sent me to test out here at.
Ooh, new product.
It clarifies the paint. This actually still looks just a little hazy. Let me switch over to a finishing pad. Again, this is the first time I've ever worked on this. So I'll pull off, that's the Rupes Yellow is their polishing pad. And this is their fine finishing pad. And it just could be this paint is a little bit on the finicky side, which I imagine is just because it's single stage. So one of the things about working on single stage, unlike a clear coat, is you're actually working on the pigments. And that does affect the appearance and how the products all work too. Kind of same thing with working on gel coats. When you're working on gel coats, pigment has a big influence on how gel coat sands, cuts, and polishes. Okay, that should get it. It's hot out here in Florida today, so I'm burning up. Oh, much better. Okay. I want to treat both sides equally, so I'm just going to hit this with a little bit of this clarifier and glossing product. Okay, Yancey, you want to come in and...
Time for a close-up?
Yeah, I want you to, let me get the splatter off this fender. I think if you come over here, and I can keep my finger here, put the orange here, so you can really capture the level of orange peel. And then when you move over, you can see the lines in the overhead lights now. They're very distinct. And that's what you're looking for in a show car finishes. It's what they call DOI, 100% DOI.
Put your finger down on the...
Okay, it's like right here. There's also a lot of DIP, dirt in paint.
Come over here.
Okay.
Put it right in the middle.
Okay. Are you capturing the overhead lights?
Yep. No, I'm capturing the reflection.
Okay, because you can get it from this side too. Okay, then right here. I'm leaving these beautiful fingerprint smudges.
There you go.
And if you want to try it from this side here. Yeah, this thing, we were making a joke earlier. The orange peel in this is so bad it's not orange peel, it's grapefruit peel. Now look at the distinction, when you put my finger down, look at the distinction of image just by sanding and buffing. How beautiful that paint came out.
Alrighty.
So there, we just proved it. that yes, you can in fact pull sanding marks out using a DA polisher. And again, the primary factors that would affect how fast or how efficiently you can do this would be the hardness or the softness of the paint, and that's always an unknown factor until you get in and start doing some testing. Yesterday when this truck arrived, I did some sanding with 1500 grit, and even though sanding is not a super good way to test how hard the paint was, I kind of find it to be on the medium side. It wasn't like super hard, it was sanding good, but when I tried to pull the 1500 grit sanding marks out with the wool pad, it was kind of tough, so that kind of told me that the paint would be more on the medium hard side at least. And then the other thing is how high do you want to finish out at? For example, for this, I finished out, I started with 1000 grit hand sanding, went to 1200 hand sanding, went to 1500 hand sanding, went to machine sanding with 1500 to refine my hand sanding marks with machine marks, and then I did a final section pass on there using the 3M Trizac damp sanding. So I left a fairly shallow sanding mark pattern, and that's how I would treat any car, because I'm a big proponent of finishing out at the highest grit your budget will allow, because that just makes any buffing faster, easier on you, and also cooler to the paint. In the Trizac system, you could actually go to 5,000, and you actually start to polish the paint at that point, and they even have 8,000. So again, what I always tell people that contact me and ask me about their own personal sanding projects, to sand out to the highest grit that your budget will allow, because some of these sanding discs that we're using here, they're not inexpensive, and that's pretty blunt. Anyway, there you go. So yeah, you can. Let me just add this comment though, that the only time anytime I'm going to cut a car, I'm still going to use a rotary. One of the reasons why is because it's really easy to do this kind of a demonstration on a panel that's very flat, but this has a concave curve here, a concave curve on the other side, and anytime you get around edges, it just becomes more difficult to maintain good pad rotation and pad oscillation, both, for fast and efficient defect removal. But with the rotary polisher, because it's gear driven, it's one direction gear driven, you're not going to have to worry about any pad slide. So to me, it's going to be faster, more efficient. And then, sometimes people will say, well, Mike, if you're using, that side over there with the Rupes blue cutting pad, it looked good, okay, and that's with an orbital. The problem with the rotary, though, is every one of these fibers is going to leave this little cut in the paint, and that's called holograms. But if you're using great abrasive technology, the hologram depth is primarily based upon the fibers, not the abrasive technology. So it's very shallow, so it will buff out very fast. So for me personally, when we finish this truck out, we will sand it down and cut it with wool pads with rotaries, then switch over to orbital polishers to perfect the paint. But if you wanted to, you could sand down a car and pull it out using an orbital polisher.
Just take a little bit more time.
It just take a little more time for the more complicated areas. The flat panels ain't going to be a problem, but again, it really depends on how high you sand out and things like paint hardness, paint softness, which are always unknown variables until you start getting in there and doing some testing. So, there you go.
You good over there?
That's it. That's all I really had today. Is I wanted to talk. Like I said, I've been asked this question. I think I covered this before we went offline. But in 2003, I transitioned at McGuire's from the corporate writer. I took over all the writing duties for Barry McGuire, and they created a job for me called Internet Technical Specialist. That's because this thing called the discussion forum went commercial, and so I was always teaching their classes and then answering questions on the forum. So basically I've been paid to answer questions about detailing for over 20 years now. And one of the most common questions I always get is, hey, can I use a DA to remove sanding marks? And so we just proved that, yes, you can.
Okay, before we get to the questions, you had a comment in there about, sanding materials can get kind of costly. Maybe tell them about how much, where the differences in the pricing are.
Oh, sure. Off the top of my head, to be honest, Yancy, I can't rattle off what Trizac costs, but I think you're talking around for a pack of 10 discs. And I have all that stuff over there if you want to grab like a 3,000. That would be Eagle Abrasives. There you go, there's Trizac. But do grab an Eagle Abrasives, okay? Eagle Abrasives are actually a little bit cheaper than the Trizac. So here's Trizac 3000. And when you feel the face of this disc, it feels like a piece of paper. You actually have to use it, and as you're using it, this medium, that's the coating that's on here that the abrasives are embodied in, it kind of breaks down, then the sanding kind of kicks in. So it takes a few passes to kind of break a disc like this in. This is the K1500 Eagle abrasives, and totally different technology. This is just abrasives onto a very thin piece of material here. But the prices, gosh, that's a great question. I'm not sure. You know, here's the deal. You can go online, go to Amazon, type any of this stuff in, and see what people are charging for this stuff. What I'm just saying is they're not cheap, okay? and for what it's worth, in all of our classes here, we show the good stuff. When you leave here, you can go get the cheap stuff for your own project. But I like people to have a great experience. Plus, I bring in some really cool cars for the classes. We want to turn out a real professional grade product.
All right. And another thing, would there be something to look for when they're getting the sandpapers? If they're looking for maybe a more budget-friendly sandpaper, is there like any key words, key terms, or anything like that?
Anti-clogging is always a good thing. You know, the Eagle abrasives and the Trizact, I think they both offer anti-clogging, so the paint won't really bond or stick to the thing. But one of the key things is, and I'm glad you brought this up, anytime you're dry sanding, you know, you want to, and I have all my sanding discs over there I use on here, the sanding sheets and sanding discs, but I just keep a towel like this on here, and then I either take my hand sanding block, put on here and pull it one way, pull it the other way. That pulls all that paint that you've removed off. And then with the electric sander, I do the same thing. I just press it against here, blip the throttle, let it buzz, and I turn it over to make sure most of that paint has been removed, and also wipe off any sanding dust from the panel. Otherwise, you'll just take that loose dust and put it right on the sanding disc. But that way you get the most life out of the sanding disc. And I would say that, gosh, sanding this, I used two 1,000 sheets on both sides. So two 1,000 sheets here, two 1,000 sheets here. I used one 1,200 to refine 1,000 to 1,200. I think I used two 1,500 sanding discs by machine to refine 1,200 to 1,500. And then I used one sanding sheet to refine by hand. And then I switched over to the Trizact. So altogether, probably less than 20 discs, but probably around 15 different sheets or discs. So you need to, you always want to make sure you got enough sanding discs or sanding sheets if you tackle a project like this so you don't run out halfway through the project. It can be really hard to find this kind of stuff locally at your local PVE store or detail supply shop.
Okay, one more question. When it comes to the sanding paper and stuff, should they stay away from the ones that have the holes in there already?
You know, that's kind of personal preference. The ones with the holes in them, and I have those over there, but that's if you're going to use a vacuum attachment on your sander. So it gets kind of complicated. First, you got to have a sander that's designed to use a vacuum attachment. Okay, so that means it's going to pull sanding dust through the backing plate. The backing plate will have holes. You'll need an interface pad that the holes line up with the backing plate, and then you'll need sanding discs that match the holes on the interface pad.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so it's just a lot. What I do is I put a dust mask on, and I like to have 100% of the surface covered, just like you see here, instead of trying to do the vacuum thing. But the other thing is and I get the vacuum is probably safer. It keeps your shop cleaner. It's a lot neater. But when you're using a vacuum attachment with a pneumatic sander, now you've got two things you got to manage. You got to manage a compressed air line, which is stiff, and you got to manage the vacuum attachment and keep it off the sides of the fender if you're working on a horizontal panel. So it's not a big deal, but it's two more things you got to do versus just sanding with a, well, in this case, I'm using cordless tools. And there are more cordless DA sanders coming onto the market all the time. I think I just saw this week, Milwaukee launched a few.
Oh,
So,
there you go.
yeah.
All right, you done? I'm
I
done
am
with
done.
my
Yeah.
tidbits pudding there. Okay, hey, I'm Yancey. I'm back again for another live. I'll be the voice from the nether over here answering your guys' questions. So if you have any questions about everything that was just discussed here throughout this video so far, get them in the comments because I'm getting ready to dive into them. So I'm going to switch back to Mike. And let's start off here. We got Humberto, obviously.
First from Puerto Rico.
First from Puerto Rico. Hello, Mike and Yancey. And we have David coming in here. Hey, Mike and Humberto and everyone else. Then, yes, South Florida in the summer, usually internet can be a little bit spotty. So we've been having a little issues. So that was the reason why we were down for a brief moment, but we're back. And I have my phone hooked up just in case if it drops down again. Alrighty, so let's go down to here. Okay, David's coming back in here. Come on. Mike, just one more time, have that lovely gentleman from Touch Up RX back for another cure session. He made a rock chip repair and scratches at Work of Art. He was awesome like yourself.
I think that was at the Chicago class. We had Lenny House there, and Lenny's a longtime friend of mine. He works for that touch-up company, and yeah, he did make everything look really easy to do.
I got you. So. Yeah, no, David, I did not leave to go to the Major League Baseball. That was funny. We have actually, this was from Facebook or Instagram. I cut with my Rotary 5-inch polish with DA 6-inch. That's cool dad car care.
That's a good combo. You know, years ago I met this gentleman online. This was during the Iraq War. I was answering questions on the McGuire's online forum, and he restored, I think it was a 65 or 66 Mustang for his son. And the idea was to, he restored the engine, the brakes, the whole thing, painted it himself, and then he wanted to sand it and buff it himself. And all he had was a Porter cable. So he contacted me and says, Mike, can I do that with this tool? And I said, yeah, and he did it. I remember the pictures are over on, they used to be on the forum at least, but it just, sometimes it could take longer. The Porter cable is a fairly anemic or weak tool, but as long as you can maintain pad rotation and pad oscillation, you can get the job done.
There you go.
The Rupes polishers are so much more powerful and efficient than this old school, what's actually a wood sander. So
all right, we have Carl Wansky. I think I said your name right. Where can I buy this rotary wool pad?
This here is actually a Lake Country pad. So anybody that sells Lake Country pads should have this. This is, I forget the exact model, but one of the things I look for in a wool pad is I want a long fiber length. So this I think is sold, it's called a 1 1/4 inch. 1 inch should be the lowest or the least fiber length. 1 1/4 is pretty good balance, maybe 1 1/2. 1 1/2, you start getting so many fibers out there just wiggling around because there's no backing behind them. But the reason I like a longer fiber wool pad for cutting is it's smoother on me, because when you make the fibers really short, it makes the pad very hard. Now when you're buffing, it's hard on you because you're running something that's basically like a rock over the paint. And not that it's a big deal, but it's a lot easier to take a spur, and clean a long fiber wool pad than it is a short fiber, just because of that hardness factor. Years ago, I had some wool pads that were like 3/4 of an inch, and I just absolutely hated them. I would do anything to avoid that. Heck, you can go down to Harbor Freight and buy a wool pad where the fiber length is at least 1 1/4 inch. So that's a good range to look for.
Okay, I hope I'm saying your name right. Karwanski. It's weird spelling. Also, I have a question. I was wet sanding with a Merca sander 2000 grit, and it stalled a lot. Emphasize a lot.
Gosh.
And couldn't remove the sanding scratches. I guess he's asking, how can you get that tool to not stall as much?
That was the sander?
Yeah, I was wet sanding with a Merca sander 2000 grit, and it stalled a lot.
Wow, I don't think I haven't used the Merca sander for maybe 10 or 15 years. I think we had some at McGuire's, might have had some at AutoGeek. But
maybe pressure?
Well, usually most of these sanders are meant to oscillate, and rotate a sanding disc, and you're not supposed to push too hard. So I have no idea. This,
The only thing I can think of is he might have been pushing too hard.
Yeah, maybe pushing too hard, and you actually just want the weight of the tool. Sometimes you press hard. If you're doing that initial cut, you want to engage the abrasives with the paint, as I like to say. But yeah, you should see good good sanding disc rotation. In our classes here, I'm going to walk off camera for just a second. I know you hate it when
camera.
I do this.
Now you get to see me. Hi. But yeah, maybe Kransky, if you're either pushing hard down, like Mike said, you only should have used like the weight of the tool, or check and see maybe you are on a canter, you weren't perfectly flat, and that's what might have been causing it.
And then if there's a speed adjustment, bring the
speed
speed up.
adjustment too.
So this is the sander that we're currently using for our automotive work here. It's the Flex, let's see, the FX3411.
You got another one over here?
Cordless sander. The orbit stroke is kind of small for this type of work. This is what's called a finishing
That way I can
sander.
get it up close.
It's 1.6 millimeters, which is pretty small. So it's a finishing sander. You jump up to like 5 millimeters or 8 millimeters. You're talking about a rough work
There's the
sander.
tool up close.
But it gets the job done. I was actually impressed with it. And when I'm teaching people how to hand sand and machine sand, I prefer to keep them more on the safe side. I'm not really here to make someone an expert, you know, in a single class. I'm here to give people a foundation they can build on. But here's what I do with this tool, back to your speed question, is when I got someone that's brand new, this has adjustable speed. Okay, so that is the 1 setting. And what I'll do is I'll have the student put it down on the paint and then look to see if they got pad rotation and oscillation. And if they don't, bump that speed up. And then as soon as you can see good pad oscillation and rotation, then you want to stop. You don't want it to be spinning so fast because then you're no longer sanding, you're grinding. You don't want to be grinding on someone's paint job. So that's how I do it. But that's a couple things you could try. And on the Merca, you know, they got sanding discs for dry sanding and wet sanding, so just make sure you're using the right sanding disc for the application.
A lot of variables in there.
Yeah, and you know, if it's wet sanding, the water acts as a lubricant, which helps to maintain sanding disc rotation and oscillation.
I'm thinking it's probably either pressure, speed, or at an angle.
Yeah, other than that, you know, I've never really come across a sander that couldn't maintain if you bump the speed up enough to maintain sanding, because you don't want it like super rotating. You just want stable rotation and oscillation.
Okay, well, that is all the questions that we have over here. Do you have any info things, class schedule?
Our last class scheduled for 2024 is coming up at it's the 3rd weekend of September, so September 20th. The 21st and the 22nd. The first day is all paint correction, ceramic coatings, and I tend to bring in really cool cars. This is a 52 Hudson that was left over from my last class. So I bring in really cool cars, but one thing they all have in common, the paint is hacked up, so you have a good learning experience. And I bring in big cars, so everybody has plenty of room to work. But we got this 3-day class coming up. The first day is all paint correction, ceramic coatings. The first tool you start out with that day is a rotary polisher. You use rotaries all 3 days, so by the time you leave here, you're going to be very comfortable with how to use a rotary, when to use a rotary, and then also when to use orbitals. The second day, I bring in cool stuff like this, and we go over hand sanding, machine sanding, back to the rotary polisher, back to orbital polishers, and try to put a show car finish on something that's just got excessive orange peel. For this class coming up, by the way, I have a 1949 Chevy Fleetline street rod. It has massive orange peel. It's actually worse than this truck.
That's pretty bad.
And the cool thing is it's been French, so the headlights, all the trim's been removed. So it makes it real easy for people that are new to sanding to learn how to sand, because they don't got to avoid door handles. I mean, it's been shaved and Frenched. There's nothing on the outside of this car except for orange peel. And I'll probably have another car by the time that class comes around, so we'll have 2 sanding cars for that day. And then I've got a 24-foot Sea Hunt center console boat, and this thing has extreme deep oxidation and a lot of dock rash. So that'll be our extreme boat detailing boat for our boat detailing class on Sunday. So it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This is an $1,800 class, so basically $600 a day. And the only thing I'd say about that is on Friday and Saturday, we start at 7:30. There's no chairs in here. I don't really give any breaks. If you need a break, go take one. I do give a small lunch break, but from 7:30, I mean, it's go time. And we bust out one car after the other car. There's always plenty of time for questions, you know, catch your breath. Sunday, I'm the benevolent dictator. I let you sleep in for an extra hour. We start that class at 8:30 because I know after going through a full day class on Friday and Saturday, you're going to be tired. You're going to use muscles you've probably never used before. So I let you sleep in for an extra hour. But you can get more information about that up at drbeasleys.com.
Okay, I have 2 more things that just came in here. So I got you. I see you guys. I'm going to get you guys answered. So hold on one second. All right, Carancy came in. He had just one more thing. Could it be a very soft interface pad?
A soft interface interface pad makes it kind of mushy, and that could be it. A firmer interface pad will enable better pad rotation. So it could be the interface pad. And there's a lot of different interface pads on the market. It can be confusing. I try to stick with the manufacturer of the sanding discs with their interface pads. Because obviously, hopefully, somebody's tested these and it's matched, it's tuned to the sanding disc and to the sander. If you go up on Amazon, there's a lot of interface pads up there, and who knows what you're getting. But,
Okay. Okay, then we have one more, Jim Pembroke. Can you discuss jeweling, just briefly?
Jeweling, jeweling is the original concept is using a rotary polisher on low speed with an ultra soft foam finishing pad and a jeweling polish, so something that's like ultra fine. And the idea being in is to maximize gloss and clarity without leaving any holograms. And I feel confident. I've got a couple of write-ups. See, the thing about that is we get into this whole discussion, can you finish out the rotary without leaving holograms? So I meet a lot of people that say, yes, they just say blanket, yes, you can do it. And I always say, well, no, it depends on the paint, okay? Some paint is more polishable than other paints. And so you don't know till you do a test. But the one thing I've always noticed about people that always claim to be able to finish out with nothing but a rotary is either they're working on a white or light colored car, so you couldn't see the holograms because of the color, or they never prove it by chemically stripping the paint and pulling it outside over bright overhead sunlight and prove that there's no holograms. Because typically what will happen is the polishing oils, the carrying agents in the polish will fill in and mask any of the holograms. It'll look great to you. And of course, if you seal over that, it'll last for a while. But over time, as you wash that car, that's when they'll show back up again. So what I teach people, instead of how to try to finish out with the rotary, is just switch over to any brand of orbital polisher. The rotating action and the oscillating action will work out the holograms left by a rotary, and this will not only ensure that you have a finish that looks good in front of you, but will hold up over time, and it protects your reputation. The last thing you want to do is buff out something like this, a black truck, finish it out the rotary, give it back to the owner, who may or may not ever do anything to maintain it, but wash it, and over time, as he uses his car wash soap, he pulls whatever you put on there off, and now when he pulls it out of the sun, it's got holograms. So I've had some bad experiences with things like that, so I like to be more on the cautious side. But at the same time, I tell people, hey, however you want to get to shiny, that's all you,
Get the job done.
Yeah, but the good news is nowadays we've got a lot of rotary polishers. Like this is the PE14, and if you just trigger it, it'll run at 400 RPM. It might be going out at 200 RPM, so you can buff very slowly. And there's also a lot of really super soft foam finishing pads out there. I think the softest one I've ever used is the Car Pro. It's this white foam pad. It's just gushy soft. Lake Country used to make a gold, it was called a jeweling pad. I don't think they make it anymore. It might be available, but you definitely need to make sure you got great abrasive technology, you got the right pad, and you got a low RPM polisher, and it's of course a light touch.
Sounds like a lot of work to me.
I just buzz over the DA and just be done with it.
I just want to say thank you guys for all the comments and questions, and I'm going to see you guys on the next one. And Mike, what are we doing right now?
When you pack up your cameras and leave, I got to actually finish out the hood.
All right. All right, say bye.
Okay, thanks for watching, everybody.